I've experienced it a lot and I still experience it to this day. You know, I think you think that once you get to one level, it's going to be easy, and nothing ever gets easy. You just get better at handling the situations and better at dealing with it. And there's more times than I can count where I wanted to give up and I wanted to, throw in the towel. But I think what always kept me going was, one, the potential of what I could be. I always had a vision for my life and who I wanted to be and what I wanted to do and how I wanted to help people. And I felt that if I quit, I was never going to fulfill that vision, and that I couldn't live with that.
Well, welcome back, everyone, to another Masters of the Game interview. And today, I got to tell you, I'm a little fired up for this one because this is the first driver that we've ever had on the show. And frankly, it's the first driver that I probably had the time to sit with and talk to. My dad back in the day did some event with his company where he got to drive NASCAR and, kind of in the passenger seat, I should say, but just to experience it, all that stuff. And so today, Amber Balcaen, a racer driver, is on the show. So Amber, thanks for being here. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to dive into this conversation.
This is so good. And to give you a little bit about Amber, about her journey, where she's been, she's actually a third-generation race car driver from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. So shout out to all you Canadians out there. But back in 2016, she actually made Canadian history when she became the first Canadian female to win a NASCAR sanctioned race in the United States. Lives in Charlotte, North Carolina. And fascinating background, right? Because it's so unique that, a female's in the NASCAR scene, first of all, but you came up, with your dad, again, third generation, started racing go-karts on dirt tracks in North Dakota, transferred to asphalt racing, in your first fall season on pavement. That's when you won that NASCAR sanctioned race, which is crazy. And just to look at kind of the journey you've been on, right? Not only from racing, but you've starred in a NASCAR reality show called Racing Wives, where they followed your journey as a racer, right? Not as a wife, but as a racer. Yep. You've been, been very fortunate to be sponsored by companies like Cal Tire, Venturini Motorsports, Nitro Motorsports, on and on. Just these opportunities you've had to race in the Menard series and in all these just amazing races and events. And I could go on and on about just your background and all that sort of stuff, but I just want to dive into your head a little bit. So let me ask this. I love asking this opening question, but what's one of the greatest memories you have from your racing days so far? I know you got a lot of racing ahead. There
is a lot. And you know what? All of them stem around my family. As you mentioned, I'm a third generation race car driver, but the love and passion that we share for racing, I think, is really what's kept together as a family. From me being 10 years old in the garage working with my dad on my go-kart to going in a pickup truck and heading to North Dakota with the go-kart, to my sprint cars days where my mom was traveling with me in the pickup truck when my dad was, in the nice motorhome. And then all the way now to places like Daytona. My parents never thought they would be at places like Daytona, especially in the infield with their daughter on track. So I think, honestly, overall, just getting to do it with them and getting to share each of those moments with them has been really awesome.
That's amazing. Well, and what was your kind of dad's specialty? Like, did he have a...
Yeah, so I'm the first racer in my whole family to go the NASCAR route. Everyone had 9-to-5 jobs. They were hobby racers, so they all raced dirt on weekends. So my grandpa raced sprint cars, my uncle raced sprint cars, my dad raced dirt late models. So they all were racers, even my cousins. But I was the first one to be crazy enough to say, you know what, I think I'm going to try making this a career and go to NASCAR. So even though it's still the motorsports industry, local dirt track racing and NASCAR industry could not be more different. And I had no idea about stock cars or like the NASCAR industry as a whole, like how you get there, what the path there is, the difference between late model stocks versus limited late models, and all the ways to get up into NASCAR. So there was a lot for me to learn.
So what was the initial inspiration, right, to even have the thought of like, I want to go do that? Like, where did that come from? And then I've got a follow-up question on that, but like, where did it come from in the first place?
Yeah, as a kid, I was obviously immersed in racing, and my whole goal was just to race sprint cars because that's what everyone in my family did. And, I wanted to be like them. And so I won a lot when I raced mini sprints. And then when I raced 410 sprint cars, won Rookie of the Year, became the highest finishing female in that series. And I caught the eye of the NASCAR diversity program. And of course, being a race car driver, I watched NASCAR on Sundays, and seeing Danica Patrick on there, I thought that was insane that a female was in the NASCAR Cup Series. And then, all of that combined kind of opened my eyes to what could be possible for me. At that moment, I was in college and I was obsessing about racing. Every project I could do, I would do it on racing. I wrote a business plan on racing. My entrepreneurship classes are all on racing. And, I had an aha moment one day in class, and I was like, I can't put out this fire that's building within me to race. Like, it's all I can think about. And I think it's time I try it out. So I went home to my mom and dad that day and said, I'm dropping out of university. I did get my 2-year business degree, but I went back to get my 4-year. And I said, I'm dropping out of university and I want to try to make it as a professional race car driver. And they're like, you're crazy. I don't know. I don't think you understand how difficult this is going to be. I had to get a visa to move down to the US and find the money for that, find the sponsorship money, because my parents are like, we morally support you, but we cannot financially support you. I've been raising my own sponsorship since I was 10 years old. So it's one thing getting a couple $1,000s for a go-kart. It's another getting a couple million to race NASCAR. So I definitely had to overcome a lot of adversity and face a lot of challenges along the way.
I imagine that during the path, because I do want to discuss like the path, right, to get to this point and where you continue to go to this day. But I got to imagine there's days where you were just like, there's roadblock after roadblock, maybe frustrations. I think we all experience that as like, doesn't matter the sport you play or what you do in business, right? Even as entrepreneurs, like there's days where it's hard or it feels heavy.
Yeah.
And sometimes, at least for me, that thought of like, I don't feel like doing this today, or why does it have to be so hard? And so we can go down these paths, right? Did you experience that stuff? And if so, like how did you work through it? Because it's hard, I think, especially athletes, it's hard.
Absolutely. I've experienced it a lot, and I still experience it to this day. I think you think that once you get to one level, it's going to be easy, and nothing ever gets easy. You just get better at handling the situations and better at dealing with it. And, there's more times than I can count where I wanted to give up and I wanted to throw in the towel. But I think what always kept me going was, one, the potential of what I could be. I always had a vision for my life and who I wanted to be and what I wanted to do and how I wanted to help people. And I felt that if I quit, I was never going to fulfill that vision, and that I couldn't live with that. And I felt a responsibility as a Canadian, as a female, as someone who doesn't come from money, to be successful in this sport, because there is nobody like me in this sport. Even to just be in the sport and not come from money is huge on its own, never mind being a female and being from Canada. So I wanted to show people like me, or that at least resonate with me, hey, if Amber can do this, then I can do that too. And I think those two things were my biggest driving forces as to not quitting. Sometimes you need to take a couple days to just get yourself right. And that can look a lot of different ways for a lot of different people. For me, it was a lot of reading, working out, meditation, going for walks, spending time in nature, spending time with family and friends.
Yes.
There's definitely times where I was very much a hermit. There's still times I need to be a little bit of a hermit to process things. But as an athlete and an entrepreneur, you always get knocked down. You're always going to be facing adversity, and challenges are always going to get propped up. I think the most difficult part of being an athlete is keeping your confidence. It's so easy to get down on yourself as an athlete. You have a bad game, a bad race. All of a sudden I suck. I'm no good. What am I doing? And then as an entrepreneur, because I think of myself as an entrepreneur as well, because I've had to raise all this money on my own to do this. And I still handle all my sponsorships, my contracts, my branding, my social media, my websites. I still manage everything on my own. So there's months where I'll be working nonstop, 12, 16-hour days and not seeing a dime come in. And then there's months where I'm like, holy crap, I can't believe
it's like magic. Yeah.
But it's just up and down. I think the thing that I've tried to work at the most is just being level-headed through all of it, because there are a lot of ups and downs.
Yeah, I like that phrase of like keeping level-headed, right? And we always read, and you listen to people, and it's like not too high, not too low, right? And I think what I hear, and I think what a lot of athletes miss, is like there's going to be highs, there's going to be lows, and it's okay. It's normal. It's part of the process. It's like we don't have to hide it anymore. And again, you don't have to have a necessarily pity party and for weeks and months and years, right? You can do something about it, and you have that power within you.
Yeah.
But it's normal. Like everybody has it. I've not met one athlete so far that hasn't experienced that. It's just all like how you choose to look at it and what you do, hopefully in a healthy way, right, to move through it.
How you manage it. Absolutely. And I think people view athletes as, people who put a lot of time into their physical appearance so that they can play their sport well. But I think that the mental strength is just as important as the physical strength, if not more, in athletics. Personally, I think your body knows what to do. It's your mind that gets in the way, and the self-doubt that you have to work through, the confidence you have to work through, the belief. There's just so much you have to work through mentally. To me, the fitness side comes easy. You get in the gym, you throw up some weights, go for a run. Like it's pretty simple. But the mental thing, that's what's not so simple.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and how have you kind of worked on that for yourself over the years, and how do you continue to do it? I tell people all the time, like I'm always working on that stuff, always, every day, because every situation is different. Like it's just like we're tested. That's the beauty of life. Like we're tested.
Exactly. And just like the gym, if you stop working out, your muscles are going to go away, and if you stop working on the mental side of it, you're not going to be where you need to be to optimally perform. And so I work with a mental coach now that kind of helps me keep on track. I practice discipline. I think that's one of my key things is when I'm disciplined and keeping the promises I make to myself. If I say I'm going to do A, B, C, D to get ready for my next race at Talladega, doing those things, action breeds confidence, and confidence, breeds results essentially. So I think just being disciplined in what I need, having a plan, being disciplined with that plan, executing the plan to create that confidence in my preparation, at least going to the track. So I know I did everything I could away from that. So when I show up, I kind of just, let things work out for how they're going to work out. The thing with racing is there's so many variables involved there. Your car can get a flat tire, your motor can blow, someone else can crash you out. Maybe your crew makes a bad pit stop. Maybe the driver makes an error, which happens a lot as well. Like, there's just so many variables that are outside of your control as well. And that's what makes it difficult. So I think when you assess your performance, not assessing your results, that's what's kind of helped me push through the bad races, I guess you could say.
That's really good. It's like that whole, it's like, well, you're lucky. It's like, well, no, I'm prepared, right? And luck favors the prepared, as the saying goes, right? But it's all about the preparation, not the luck. Sure, maybe luck or a blessing has something to do with it. I don't know. Maybe I'll find out one day. But it's that preparation, right? And taking the actions. And I love that. Like, just if you say you're going to do this, like, just do those things, right? Because it breeds that confidence.
Yeah.
I think that's massive. So let's talk about your path.
Okay.
Off the dirt, onto pavement. Like, what was your path to get to that point? Because like you said, there's multiple paths you can take, different cars, different, all sorts of things. But what was kind of your path? How did you break in? And how did you even figure out, like, that's the path I want to take?
Yeah, my path was not linear by any means. The most challenging part of my journey has been the lack of funding, the lack of financial support. Yep. Most people that are in NASCAR or in racing come from very wealthy families, and their parents are able to back them financially to get to where they need to go. And so I felt I was always behind the 8 ball, because even at 10 years old, I was at racing swap meets with my dad selling stickers and, asking people for $100 here, $100 there to be able to raise the money to race. And even now to this day, like this year, I'm not racing a full season because I don't have enough sponsorship. Or last year I raced a full season, and the year before that it was part-time. The year before that was full-time. And so it's that constant up and down. And even my first year in NASCAR was 2016. on a more a regional level. Now I'm on a national level. But 2016, my first year, I did great. Won Rookie of the Year, got, I think, 11 top fives, 7 top tens in only 12 races, won. And my first year on stock car, my first year on pavement. And I was like, oh, my career is going to blow up. Like, it's going to be easy peasy from now on. And then you fast forward to the next year, and I didn't have enough sponsorship to race a full season again. Mm-hmm. And so from 2017 to 2020, I raced part-time. And those 4 years was the biggest mental struggle of, do I keep trying for this? Do I keep pushing for this? Because I'm not a teenager. I'm in my 20s at this point. Luckily, with racing, it's a little different than other athletics where you can race a little bit later.
True.
To your age. But, it was constantly, do I just give this up and do something else? Or do I keep pushing? Because there was 4 years of trying to get where I wanted to go and not getting there, just racing a couple times. I was so incredibly broke because I was here on a visa. So I wasn't able to make money other than racing, but I wasn't racing. So it was a hard 4 years. But I just kept visualizing, standing at Daytona and looking at the grandstands and seeing the checkered flag and feeling myself belting in the car and with my hands on the wheel. And I was like, I'm not going to stop until I get that. And don't get me wrong, there are days where I'm like, I can't do this anymore. but the majority of the days, but then I'd pick myself, get back up and be like, Amber, you have to make this happen.
And I hope the athletes and like everyone listening to this, watching this, like hear that, because it's that vision, right? It can be what carries you through, and that bigger purpose, which you talked about earlier, right? To kind of being the example and like, using your gifts and talents to the fullest. And like, that's sometimes, and I say that from personal experience, sometimes that's like what you have to and it's important, like part of it, the recipe, if you will, to like keep yourself on track. And when it gets going tough, like it push through the things getting in your way.
Yeah.
It's a huge piece. As a female, you had to have gotten comments like people doubting you and you're going against males and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I imagine.
Yeah.
How did you deal with those, take those in, set them aside, let them fester? I don't know. Like what was that experience like for you?
It's something I've dealt with my entire career, of course. But the more I've leveled up in my racing career, the more eyes that are on me, the more negativity that I've experienced. I felt when I dealt with it back in the dirt racing days, but I've never dealt with it to the extent that I'm dealing with it now. And I'd be lying if I said like, oh yeah, it doesn't bother me at all. It's all good. And I think for the most part, I managed it decently well. But my last race, I took out a big YouTuber that has millions and millions of followers. And his fan base was very vocal about their displeasure with me. And I received tens of thousands of hate messages and like death threats, and just 90% of them just saying that women should not be in a race car. And that gets, when you read it that many times, it does get to you. But my focus going into this next race is just to ignore all the noise and do everything I can do for myself to build my confidence back up and think about all the good things I have done and the races I have won and the races I have performed well at, and take a little bit of motivation from that, but also just putting in the action and preparing more for this next race to kind of block out the noise and just focus on being the best race car driver I can be.
Yeah. And again, I imagine it's hard, right? Especially when that happens, of like, you get the comments, and it's something I think just kids in general these days, right? And as an influencer yourself, and like, it's this is like society a little bit, right? That I can, from a couch and God knows where, make any comment I want to any person I want with zero repercussions, right? And I can be as nice or as mean as I want to.
Yeah. But I think the big truth from that is nobody doing better than you is ever going to hate on you or, talk negatively about you. If it was some NASCAR drivers that I really look up to saying this kind of stuff, it would be different, but it's not, it's people with 7 followers and not even their own face on their profile photo, so
Yes.
it's, a lot of people would love to be in the position I'm in and get to race at these cool tracks and stuff. But they also don't realize the work that it took to get here. And I think that's the biggest misconception of being a female in motorsports is, oh, it's easy for them because, they're a female, they're marketable, when that's truly just not the case. Male drivers don't have to deal with, well, is she actually good? Can she actually drive? And, we have to work so much harder to build the trust from our team members, our sponsors, our competitors, and all the females that I know in this sport are the hardest workers I know. And it doesn't matter how feminine or masculine they are, or anything like that. They work their absolute butts off. And I know that for a fact. And I'm included in that. I do everything I can to prepare and be the best race car driver I can be so that they don't have to put that female label on me.
Yes. And
for a long time, I've tried to shy away from being a female and just focus on being a driver. And, I always get the question, what's it like being a female? And I always say, gender doesn't matter. You put your helmet on, the car doesn't know if you're a man or a female. You just do the best thing you can. But the reality of the situation is I am different. And to ignore that would be ignoring a huge part of who I am and what I am, how I'm seen from everyone else.
Yes.
And so it's just, I think, partly embracing it and then partly just, trying to not cloud everything else that's actually important.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's huge, right? Because it's end of the day, you look at the secrets to success, right? And I thought a little bit on the phone before this, but after doing so many interviews, right, I start hearing certain themes, right? And there's the secrets, if you call them, right, to success. And I always tell people, when you look at success, it's relatively, the formula, if you will, is relatively simple, right? It's not easy though. It's really challenging, right? So if I say I'm going to do A, B, C, D, to use your example, well, what happens on the days when you don't do A, B, C, D, right? What do you do? How do you react? And how do you stay consistent? And no matter what, do A, B, C, D, right? And that's one of the kind of secrets, if you will, of people like yourself. Doesn't matter the gender or anything or what the sport is, that's it, right? That's one of them of if you choose to work hard, stay committed, be consistent, eventually that's going to get you to maybe not necessarily, it's not a guarantee of
that's
great
the thing,
success,
though, not guaranteed. I think that's the scariest part about athletics and entrepreneurship. You can put in all this work, your blood, your sweat, your tears, give up everything, make all the sacrifices, and nothing's guaranteed. You're not guaranteed to be successful at it. And I think that's the scariest part of it. And maybe why not everyone steps into that courage of pursuing it. And I totally get that. Yeah. Because it's not guaranteed, but you also want to believe that all your hard work will eventually pay off in some way or another.
Yes. Yes. At least that's what I've learned too, right? Every situation where maybe I was consistent or wasn't consistent and chose to, refocus myself. It's whether you succeed or failure, there's really usually some good stories that come from that, right? It's
absolutely.
Maybe it's you laugh, maybe you cry at one, but you laugh at the other one. And it's
you're going to build unforgettable experiences. You're going to meet incredible people along the way. You're going to build some really cool relationships with people and hopefully things too that you can look back on and be like, that's really cool that we did that,
It's so amazing. Give me a perspective of what it's like to be in the driver's seat, literally ripping around Talladega. Is it calm? Is it insane? What would I experience sitting in the driver's seat?
It's a little bit of all the above. It's kind of crazy because it's almost like the faster you go, the more things slow down. So at Talladega, we're going about 185, 190 mile an hour, and we are inches, if not touching other cars around us that entire time. It's a drafting track. So we have cars in front of us, cars behind us, cars beside us, and you're just all mushed together. And it's so intense because there's so many sensory inputs. You have the spotter talking to you, you have the crew chief talking to you, asking for updates of how the car's handling, what adjustments it needs, how it feels, what you're feeling. So you're having to vocalize that to them while you're going 185 or 90 mile an hour. Also trying to hit your marks, manage your throttle and brake traces, managing the gap in between the car in front of you and behind you and beside you. And then also just being alert on what's going around. You know, are there crashes coming? What's the energy like in front of you? Can you anticipate a crash? Can you try to set up a move for a pass or a block? And so there's a lot happening all at once, you know, flipping your switches, making sure your RPMs are where it's going to be. Is your water temp correct? Or is your, you know, there's just so much going on inside the car at that time. It's sensory overload, but at the same time, it's the most like calming, peaceful, out of body experience that you can have. And it's honestly a euphoric experience, and it's the adrenaline of it all, the feeling of it all, like that's what I'm addicted to. And that's another big reason why I didn't give up, because I couldn't imagine not driving race cars. Even no matter how many bad races I have or crashes or this or that, it always goes back to the feeling of being in the car and how euphoric that is and how you just want to experience it. Because race car drivers, I actually read this in a book, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Race car drivers are one of the very few people that get to truly experience what it's like to be in the now. And it's because everything else is so shut out. You're not thinking about what you got to eat for dinner or any problems you're having in work or business or relationships or anything like that. You're truly just focused on that exact moment. And I think that's probably the neatest part about being a driver, is getting to experience that. And I'm sure other athletes feel that when they put their helmet on or when they're in participating in their sport as well. But that's the feeling that I'm really addicted to, and going fast, of course.
I go fast. I'm sure everybody's familiar with the phrase "shake and bake." Watch if you like comedies and movies.
Yeah. Talladega is my next race, and I watch Talladega Nights the night before I race Talladega every year, because it gets me riled up. Like it gets me so excited for the race.
It's so good, so good. How do you train for something like that? Because I think to your point, right? If you're going to experience success, you have to be in the now, right? It doesn't matter the sport. You're forced into it as soon as you hit the gas, right? In your sport. But how do you practice and prepare so you're ready for something like that?
Yeah. So racing is one of the few sports where we don't really get to practice. It's not like stick and ball sports where I can just hop on the field and, you know, practice the skill sets. It's $10,000, $20,000+ to practice. And then NASCAR has so many rules and regulations on how often we're allowed to practice, what tracks we're allowed to practice. So we're not allowed to practice at the tracks that we're going to prior, other than if they give us allotted time to practice before the race, which typically is about 30 to 40 minutes. When you break that down to coming in to make changes on the car and going back out, you're probably only doing 10 laps or so. So we get about, you know, depending on the racetrack, at Talladega, we'll probably get about 10 or 12 laps of practice. And then you got to go right into it. So you have to be adaptable. You have to adjust very quickly. And if you make a mistake in racing, it's not just, oh, you're letting your team down. It could be costly and deathly, right? You could injure yourself, injure others. So, and mistakes are going to happen. There's no athletics where an athlete's not going to make a mistake. And you see it at the lower levels of NASCAR all the way to the NASCAR Cup Series. And they're some of the best race car drivers in the entire world. So one thing we do utilize is simulators. So each manufacturer has a multi-million-dollar simulator that if you're aligned with a manufacturer, you can use that. So last year I was full-time with Toyota, so got to use the Toyota simulator. Very, very similar to what the track is like. And it's really cool. The engineers come in, they put in the setups of the car, and you can give feedback through the simulator, and the engineers will change setups into the computer. So it's a really, really neat technology. There's a lot of technology around racing. And then if you're not able to be on a full-time ride and be with a manufacturer, then we utilize a game or system or program called iRacing. So I have a little simulator right in my place here, and I hop on that and just get as many reps in as I can. I can't feel anything like underneath me. It doesn't move. It's stationary, but it's a good visual and reaction time. And there's still some things you can pick up on and learn. And if that's the closest thing you can get to doing the actual thing, then you got to take advantage of that.
Interesting. That the technology stuff fascinates me. It's where it's come from. I mean, my gosh,
the engineers are so intelligent. It's insane what they do, honestly.
Yeah, the only thing I can compare it to, honestly, is I was at the United Airlines training facility years ago, and they had a simulator, and it literally felt like you were in an airplane and you're in a box. And I was like, this is insane. Like taking off, landing. I'm like, we're at one point going to land in a field, and the guy's like, buckle up. And I'm like, what is this thing going to like come off the hinges or something? But
it's
amazing.
Crazy. Even in the manufacturer simulators that I was in, my heart rate would be the same as it was during a race. So our heart rates are anywhere between 160 beats per minute to sometimes over 200 beats per minute during a race. And we're in the cockpit for an hour and a half, 2 hours at a time. And so we're burning like thousands of calories. And I would put my Apple Watch on in my sim session just to see. And it was very, very similar. Okay. And I would get out of the simulator full of sweat, as if I just worked out. And another really cool thing that we do to prepare for races, because a lot of people don't understand how hot it is in the car. It can be over 140 degrees in our race cars. So we actually do heat training where we train in not a sauna, but like a heat assimilated room, so that our heart rate is used to being super high while we're under stress, while we're dealing with the heat. So that's another training kind of technique that we use that maybe some people wouldn't necessarily know about.
Yeah, when I saw some video about you where I can't remember, I don't have the right context around this, but the air hose in the car broke or something, and so you were basically baking in the car because there was no airflow. It was something to do with one of the hoses broke, and so there was a pit stop. They fixed it real quick, but you were baking in the car basically.
So we don't have air conditioning in the race cars, but there are a few options that we can utilize to kind of pretend or be more similar like it. And one of those is the air hose. So it connects to the back of our helmet, and it just blows air through you. So you have circulation. It's not air conditioning by any means, but at least it's some air circulation. A lot of other drivers use a cool suit. So what that is, it hooks up to kind of think of like a little radiator fan. And it blows cold water through the shirt that they wear underneath their race suit. Now, those are about like $12,000, so I've never purchased one of those.
Right.
Definitely something I've thought about, but that's why I put a lot of time into the heat training to get my body acclimated for those hot races.
Yes. That's very true. Yeah, that'd be a nice little bell and whistle to have, right? But you're also worried about weight and speed.
Another thing is when those go wrong, because they do malfunction at times, then you're having boiling water in your suit, and it actually does the reverse effect and actually can make things a lot worse. So I've always been a little afraid of that. I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna push through the heat and do my best.
Yeah, Amber is randomly pulling off the track and popping the suit to let the water out. Yeah, that's a good point. So there's so many questions I want to ask. I want to be aware of time, but who's a coach or mentor or someone that has like helped you kind of in this path and on this journey, and how has he or she really helped you with where you're at today?
Yeah, honestly, there hasn't been one sole person in particular. It's been a mix of a lot of different people that have helped me in different ways, whether it's on the business side, the driving side. I do work with a mental coach, but then I'm also an avid reader of self-development books, mental performance, thinking. So a lot of what I've learned is through those books and just different people I've met either in similar situations or similar paths that were before me. And honestly, just other athletes and other podcasters and people online, just getting any type of information I can. And it's not necessarily only race car drivers, like the amount of interviews I've listened about like Kobe Bryant and like, there's so many great athletes. And even though our sports are so different, the mental side of it, the mental component's very similar. So, not just one person, but a lot of different people from a lot of different facets.
I love that. And again, I've known you for a very short time, right? In the grand scheme of things. But what I can tell about you, and tell me if I'm wrong, please, if I'm reading this wrong, I don't think I am. But the beauty about it is when you read those books, listen to the podcasts, talk to people, leverage others, you strike me as a person who puts it to action, right? And not to say like, oh, that was perfect and I like that, but it's like, I'm going to try it. I'm going to do it. Let's see if that helps me. Is that one of your secrets that you're just like, I heard it, let's go do it and see?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely try my best, but I'm also human at the end of the day. And sometimes I'm like, you know what, I've fallen off on this aspect a little bit. Like got to get back to that. Or, I'm always slightly changing up my routine. If something's working, then I'll keep at it. But maybe that kind of stops working. I need something else. For a long time, discipline was what I needed to work on the most. But then I kind of overcompensated and got so structured and so disciplined that I didn't have any fun in life. I wasn't doing anything other than working and training, and I was isolated. And, a lot of people around me were like, Amber, you need some balance. You need to live, because I've made racing my everything for so long. And sometimes when you make something your everything and that everything isn't working out the way you want it to, it's very difficult to deal with and work through. So I think I like to use the word harmony instead of balance, because balance looks different to everyone. And I also don't like the word balance because I think a lot of people can use it as an excuse to be lazy or maybe not hold up on their promises. And, I think that harmony is going to look different for everyone, and everyone needs something a little different. It's not a one size fits all. So it's just always assessing and reassessing and restructuring and replanning and programming and trying to fit what works best to lead you to your optimal performance.
Love that. Yeah, because you're right. I mean, sometimes like, again, you look at the same workout over and over again, right? At some point, the experts will tell you like, at some point you need to mix it up because your muscles are now used to that. So they're not going to react the same and grow the same and do all that sort of stuff, right? So it's kind of that just paying attention, the ebbs and flows, and like just mixing it up as you need to and paying it. But to your point, paying attention to that whole thing.
For sure, because sometimes you need a kick in the butt, but sometimes you just need a shoulder to, lean on. Like it just depends where you're at. So it's just figuring out, I think, kind of what you need in that situation and making it work for you.
Love that. All right, 2 more questions.
Let's I want to hear them.
We'll see. 2 more. This is a pretty general one, right? And we've talked a lot about these elements, things like that. But, if you were sitting in front of a group of, high school kids right now or college kids, things like that, and, they ask you for just advice, right? They have these dreams and these desires and all these different things. What would you tell them?
I think the biggest thing is to never let the opinions of others dictate the decisions you make for yourself. I think to the core, we know what we need to do and how we want our future to look and how we're going to get there. And I think the outside noise can cause a lot of people to be fearful of being seen or putting in the effort or, having that courage to take the next step. But if you do it for you and the love of your sport, then you're going to find a way. And then the next piece of advice is the cheesiest, but just never give up. Honestly, there's going to be so many highs and lows, and it's going to be challenging, and the struggle doesn't ever really stop. You just get better at dealing with the struggle and figuring out what works for you to be able to get through those things, and just having great people around you. If you are intentional about having great people around you and and being grateful for what they bring to you and showing them the appreciation. I think, connection in sports is so big. Racing isn't seen as a team sport, but it is a team sport. The driver gets all the accolades, but if my crew doesn't bring me a fast car, if they don't change my tires quickly, if they aren't lifting me up and making me, Amber, you got this, like, you can do this, then it makes my job a lot more difficult. And if you can have really great people around you who believe in you and lift you up and make you better, but you also put the time and the effort to make them feel appreciated and make sure they know how grateful you are for them to be a part of your journey, I think that's definitely key.
That's beautiful. Wonderful. Wonderful. Mic drop. That was so good. That's so good. Last question for you, because I know people want to connect with you, right? I'll talk about sponsors here in a minute, but where can people best connect with you and follow you?
I'm on every social media platform there is. Most of my handles are at Amber Balcaen 10, AMBERBALCAEN 10. Pretty active on Instagram. Trying to get more active on TikTok. You can even find me on LinkedIn, especially if you're a potential sponsor listening. Reach out on there. My website's amberbalcaenracing.com. I got some really cool merchandise on there. If you guys want to get a t-shirt or anything, that's always a way you can support.
Love it. And I'll put links into everything, in the show notes. So please go connect, with Amber. And, one last thing I'll say, and Amber spoke to this a little bit, right? But when you look at a sport like NASCAR racing in general, right? It's an expensive sport and you need support, like the team around you, things like that. So I'll do a call out to, corporate sponsors and people looking to get into the kind of NASCAR world and support somebody like Amber. Like, connect with her, please. Let's get her a full season this year and many, many more full seasons. Let's just sign the deal now, a multi-year deal. So
I love that. That's awesome. There's so many different ways I can provide value to my sponsors. And it's really about being on a journey with me, but I understand the business side of it too. And I've proven return on investment to all my partners. And all of my partners, the first time ever going to NASCAR race was watching me. And now they're absolutely addicted to it and are watching on Sundays and are obsessed. So it's a really cool journey to be a part of and something that we can do together.
It's awesome. And one of these days I'm going to have to sneak down to Charlotte and you'll have to sneak me on a track somewhere or something like that.
Yeah, there's actually a super cool go-kart track here that's owned by one of the NASCAR team owners. And it's called Trackhouse Motorplex, and it's outdoor. It's super big. The karts are really fast. And I was actually there last week just with some of my competitors, actually just getting some reps in. And Dale Earnhardt Jr. walks by and Will Powers walks by. It's insane that you see these people at a go-kart track that you can go as rentals and just have fun with. So yeah, if anyone's listening and want to try North Carolina, Trackhouse is really cool.
It's amazing. Well, Amber, I can't thank you enough for spending time with me. And again, I spend another couple hours talking to you and even going deeper, but thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you for having me. I love talking about the mental side of sports and athletics and entrepreneurship, because I do think it's the most difficult part. I have no problem getting in the gym lifting weights. That's a constant challenge. So I love what you're doing, and thank you for having a platform to educate others on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, for those of you, just to reiterate, please go connect with Amber. As she said, right, our goal with even this series, with what we do with athletes, is to master the mental game, right? And we can do that, like getting our black belt in karate, right? It's getting to the highest level. You master this, it just positions you for great success. So please share this episode with your family, friends, corporate sponsors, please, all the companies you know, and we'll see you on the next Masters of the Game interview. Thanks, everybody.